Across the golden plains of Anatolia, a kingdom quietly awakened, born from the dreams of riders and fighters. It expanded between two seas where the waves of the Black Sea quietly meet the Mediterranean through the narrow Bosphorus passage. This land of gentle hills and fertile valleys, where ancient peoples had risen and fallen for thousands of years, would become the birthplace of one of the most lasting empires in history. This was the region at the meeting point of three continents, with Europe stretching toward Asia while Africa looked across the deep blue waters to the north. In this melting pot of cultures, where trade routes met and armies marched since ancient times, a small Turkish tribe shaped a fate that would resonate for 6 centuries. They appeared just as the old world was shifting, with the Byzantine Empire weakening, the Mongol threat fading, and the medieval era transitioning to a new age. Emerging from modest roots on the Byzantine border, they eventually crowned conquered Constantinople with shining domes. Moving from a gathering of nomadic riders to rulers of a refined state, they learned and integrated the wisdom of those they defeated. Their flags flew from the rocky coasts of the Black Sea to the blazing deserts of Arabia and stretched westward to the very gates of Vienna. Following them were merchants, thinkers, poets, and builders, each weaving their contributions into the vibrant fabric of the empire. The Ottomans established their dominance not simply through conquest, but through a fusion of influences. They inherited Byzantine administrative techniques, Persian royal customs, Arab religious learning, and the fierce martial traditions of the Central Asian steppes. In their hands, these diverse elements transformed into something unique, not entirely Eastern nor Western, but serving as a bridge between different worlds. Their cities buzzed with the tongues of many peoples, their markets stocked with merchandise from Venice to Samarkand, and their courts decorated with exquisite calligraphy and intricate geometric art. Sultans ruled there both as the sword and the shadow, in a place where East encountered West, not only in warfare, but also within the marketplace of ideas. Under the Ottoman Crescent, various faiths coexisted. Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived alongside one another in a system that was far from perfect, but astonishing given the era. The arts flourished within majestic palaces where miniature painters used single hair brushes and poets sought the Sultan's approval. The echoes of history are etched in ancient stones, from the grand mosques to the lively bazaars and marble baths that endure to this day. Their saga is one of breathtaking military triumphs and devastating losses, of wise rulers and corrupt officials, of breakthroughs in technology alongside entrenched traditionalism. It tells the story of an empire that grew swiftly during its youth, reached stability in its peak years, and gradually diminished in later times. This trajectory mirrors the familiar arc seen in many great powers, stretching from the sword of Osman to the era of reforms. The Ottoman saga stretches across ages and continents, telling the tale of an empire that profoundly influenced the modern world. Its boundaries, conflicts, and cultures have left a lasting mark. Even now, long after its banners have faded, the Ottoman legacy can be found in the cuisine of the Balkans, the architecture of Istanbul, the political landscape of the Middle East, and the very geography of our planet. This is the history of the Ottoman Empire. The story begins in the late 13th century when Anatolia, once the stronghold of Byzantine authority, had become a fractured patchwork of rival principalities. The once powerful Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, which had ruled the area, was crumbling under internal struggles and the harsh consequences of Mongol invasions. At this time, the Mongol Empire held distant suzerainty over these lands, but exercised only weak control. In this power vacuum, opportunity awaited the daring. Along the northwestern frontier of the collapsing Seljuk domain, where the mountains open up to fertile plains, the borderlands between Muslim and Christian territories were ruled by Turkish tribal leaders called Beys. These frontier chiefs commanded groups of mounted warriors known as Ghazis, men who combined religious fervor with the practical goal of acquiring loot and territory. Among these frontier leaders was a man named Erik, head of a small, nomadic Turkish tribe that had fled westward from Central Asia to escape the advancing Mongols. As a reward for his faithful service to the Seljuk Sultan, Erik was granted authority over land surrounding the town of Soy, situated near Byzantine borders. In this area, his people slowly shifted from being nomadic herders to established farmers and frontier raiders. When Erik passed away around the year 1281, leadership of this small territory went to his son Owen Bey. Owen was not the wealthiest nor the most influential among frontier lords, yet he had traits that would turn his modest inheritance into the seed of a vast empire. Charming and politically savvy, he realized that triumph needed more than sheer military strength. He forged alliances through marriage, welcomed skilled refugees fleeing Mongol-controlled regions, and absorbed Byzantine defectors into his expanding domain. Unlike some peers engaging in unrestrained plundering, Owen adopted a policy of relative tolerance toward Christian villagers who accepted his governance. This practical method led to the emergence of the early Ottoman state. Christians who peacefully submitted were given protection and taxed, whereas those who opposed faced the full might of Owen's growing forces. Local Greek, Armenian, and Turkish farmers often preferred Owen's rule over that of Byzantine landlords or rival Turkish chiefs, considering his tax demands lighter. This combination of military conquest and administrative assimilation of conquered peoples shaped the foundation of what was to become a formidable power. Becoming a defining feature of Ottoman statecraft, the Ottoman tradition tells of a dream that appeared to Owen early in his ascent to power. This vision has come to play a crucial role in the founding legend of the empire. In this dream, he saw a giant tree growing from his lineage, its branches and foliage stretching across much of the known world. Under its canopy stood mountains such as the Caucasus, the Atlas, the Taurus, and the Balkans. From the roots of this tree flowed 4 great rivers: the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Nile, and the Danube. On these waters ships sailed, cities emerged along their banks, and the crescent moon shone above everything. When Owen shared this dream with Sheikh Edebali, a respected Sufi mystic whose daughter he hoped to wed, the holy man interpreted it as a divine assurance of an imperial destiny. Whether this story is true or legend, it fulfilled an important role. It granted spiritual authority to Ottoman rule and cast Owen's heirs as rightful possessors of a mission ordained by God. Throughout Ottoman history, this dream was frequently mentioned to justify the dynasty's claim as leaders of the Islamic world. Though Owen's early victories were limited in size, they were carefully chosen. He captured Byzantine fortresses and towns around Owen Bay, gradually enlarging his domain and drawing warriors to join his cause. By the year 1299, Owen felt strong enough to announce his independence from the declining Seljuk Sultanate, a moment celebrated as the founding of the Ottoman state. Followers started referring to themselves as Osmanes or Ottomans, identifying with the ruler, Owen. The early Ottoman state was structured around military demands. Ottoman society preserved many traits of its nomadic Turkic roots while integrating Byzantine and Seljuk administrative systems. The Ghazi warriors, who formed the core of Owen's armies, were granted lands in freshly captured regions, creating a group of mounted fighters who could be summoned during conflicts. Markets developed around border forts and a simple bureaucracy began emerging. Religious bodies played a vital role in stabilizing Ottoman authority. Owen built strong connections with Sufi orders whose mystical interpretation of Islam attracted both Turks and converts alike. Dervish lodges founded in conquered territories acted as hubs for spiritual and cultural fusion, assisting in the assimilation of local communities into the Ottoman realm. Islamic law served as the basis for governance, albeit enforced with practical flexibility during these initial stages. As Byzantine influence weakened, Owen's forces advanced further into imperial lands. In the year 1301, his troops triumphed over a Byzantine army near Baphius, securing Ottoman dominance over most of Bithynia. This victory marked the transition of the Ottomans from mere raiders to a powerful military force capable of winning battles against imperial troops. Owen's son, Orhan, who had demonstrated a skilled leader, Eric commanded many of these subsequent campaigns alongside his son, systematically capturing the Byzantine fortresses in northwestern Anatolia. This effort reached its peak with the extended siege of Bursa, a prosperous Byzantine city that controlled vital trade routes. Although Owen Bey directed the initial phase of this siege, he did not live to witness its conclusion in 1323 or 1324. As the siege of Bursa dragged on, Owen Bey grew ill, and realizing his time was short, called his son Orhan to give final advice. According to Ottoman chronicles, he urged Orhan to rule his people with fairness, spread the faith through the sword, and value learned men highly. With the same humble grace that marked his life, the founder of what would become one of history's great dynasties passed away in his wooden home at Sud. Orhan completed the conquest of Bursa in 1326, establishing it as the first capital of the Ottoman state. Legend says Orhan reported the city's fall at his father's grave, fulfilling Owen Bey's last wish. The modest domain that Owen Bey had created through bravery, strategy, and charisma had turned into a principality of increasing importance. In the lush hills of Bursa, surrounded by holy tombs and towering mosques, the Ottoman state found its initial true home. From Owen Bey's visionary beginnings, his descendants built a power that would last for 6 centuries, with the sword of Owen Bey passed on to every new generation. The inauguration ritual for the Sultan in the dynasty became a powerful emblem of legitimate authority, passed down through many generations of conquerors, builders, poets, and reformers. Although nobody could predict it at the time, the groundwork was laid for a powerful empire that would eventually span 3 continents and alter the direction of global history. As the green banner of the Ottomans waved proudly above the walls of Bursa, the dynasty founded by Osman faced a critical juncture. Capturing this wealthy Byzantine city represented both a conclusion and a fresh start, fulfilling Osman's vision and signaling the beginning of a new chapter in Ottoman history. Under the guidance of his son Orhan, the small principality began to transform from a frontier domain into a strong state position between 2 continents. Orhan Ghazi governed for 36 years, from 1326 to 1362, inheriting not only his father's lands but also Osman's sharp political insight and knack for creating institutions. He established his court in Bursa and proceeded to shape the Ottoman domain from a loose band of Turkish warriors into a formalized state apparatus. Conquest had brought wealth and prestige, but also new difficulties since the Ottomans now governed sizable populations that were neither Turkish nor Muslim, demanding more advanced systems of administration than simple frontier raids. One of Orhan's earliest reforms was to commission the production of the Ottoman Empire's first coins, which served as a strong emblem of sovereignty and statecraft. The sovereign power he established included a basic chancellery that adapted Persian and Byzantine administrative methods. In the newly captured Owen Bey, he transformed churches into mosques and also constructed new religious complexes such as the impressive Green Mosque, which still stands today. These architectural endeavors signified the arrival of a ruling dynasty with imperial goals. During this time, the Ottoman military system experienced important advancements. While Ghazi cavalry remained a vital component, Owen Bey understood the necessity of infantry capable of conducting sieges and maintaining control over territory. Around 1330, he formed the Yahya Corps, consisting of paid Turkish infantrymen who became the first regular Ottoman military unit. More importantly, he laid the foundation for what would later become the Janissary Corps, an elite group of slave soldiers taken from the empire's Christian population. This process, formalized later as the Devshirme system, involved the periodic recruitment of Christian boys from rural regions. These boys were converted to Islam and underwent intense training. They became the Sultan's personal soldiers, bound in loyalty solely to him. Although this practice might appear harsh by today's standards, in that historical context, many families saw it as an opportunity. They willingly gave their sons to the system, understanding it provided a chance for power and social mobility otherwise impossible for Christian peasants. Over time, the Janissaries developed into one of history's most effective military units and served as the core of the Ottoman armed forces. For centuries, military strength remained key while Eric carefully watched the events unfolding across the narrow seas. Although the Byzantine Empire had weakened, it still controlled Constantinople and various lands in the Balkans. However, Byzantine politics had become a tangled web of family conflicts and civil unrest. In 1346, Emperor John V, also known as the Sixth Kakusinus, engaged in a bitter fight against the regency of John V Palaeolus and made a critical choice. He sought help from the Ottoman military and offered Owen Bey's son Eric the hand of his daughter Theodora in marriage. This Byzantine gesture gave the Ottomans exactly the chance they had been waiting for. In 1354, an earthquake damaged the walls of several Byzantine forts near the Dardanelles. Eric's son Suleiman Pasha took advantage of the situation, capturing the fortress of Timpai and then the vital city of Gallipoli. With this, Ottoman forces established their very first permanent base in Europe, a strategic position from which they would begin their conquest of the Balkans. Suleiman, however, did not survive long after this victory, as he died in a hunting accident shortly afterward. Despite this loss, the momentum he had set into motion was carried forward by his brother Murad, who came to power after Eric in 1362. During a reign lasting 27 years from 1362 to 1389, Murad transformed the Ottoman realm from a localized power into a monumental empire crossing 2 continents. He followed a clear and steady plan, expanding Ottoman influence systematically in both Europe and Anatolia. In Europe, Ottoman troops advanced relentlessly through the region of Thrace, setting the stage for further conquests and the empire's rise to dominance. Seizing the vital city of Adrianople, which the Turks called Adira, In the year 1369, Murad was captivated by its strategic significance. He declared Edirne his new capital, thereby symbolically moving the Ottoman focal point toward Europe. From this base, Ottoman forces advanced into Bulgaria, Serbia, and Macedonia. This progress alarmed the Christian Balkan states, prompting them to form an alliance led by the Serbian prince, Lazar. On the 15th of June 1389, the opposing armies clashed at Kosovo Field, known locally as Kosovo Polje, in a battle that remains one of the most pivotal in history. The exact details of this encounter have been clouded by centuries of nationalistic legends, yet it is known that both Murad and Lazar lost their lives. Murad was killed by a Serbian noble who feigned defection, while Lazar was executed following his capture. Despite its heavy toll, Kosovo was a triumph for the Ottomans, breaking the organized Balkan resistance for many decades. Murad's son, Bazid, who had led one sector of the Ottoman army, took command on the battlefield. To eliminate any threats to his authority, he executed his own brother, setting a precedent for fratricide that became a grim Ottoman practice to avoid civil conflicts. For 13 challenging years from 1389 to 1402, Bazid, known as the Thunderbolt Yildirim for his swift military maneuvers, accelerated Ottoman expansion throughout the Balkans. He reduced Serbia and Bulgaria to vassal states and advanced further into Wallachia and Bosnia. During this period, a crusading army emerged under the command of King Eric of Hungary, accompanied by numerous French and German knights, set out to reclaim the Balkans for Christendom, but was defeated by Owen Bey at the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396. Most of the knights captured during the battle were executed, which gave Owen Bey a terrifying reputation across Western Europe. In Anatolia, Owen Bey abandoned the cautious strategies of his predecessors, who had expanded slowly through alliances and focused attacks against Byzantine lands. Instead, he initiated a systematic campaign to unite the other Turkish chieftains, nearly doubling the Ottoman realm. By 1390, the Ottomans had control over most of western and central Anatolia, putting them on a collision course with the growing power of Timur, or Tamerlane, in the east. Owen Bey's swift military success was accompanied by important internal reforms. He reinforced central authority, reducing the independence of frontier lords who previously operated with considerable freedom. The Ottoman administration grew, adopting Persian bureaucratic methods. Islamic education flourished as new madrasas were founded throughout the Ottoman lands. Owen Bey also began to create a naval force, understanding that dominating the seas was crucial for an empire spanning several coastlines. Nevertheless, Owen Bey's ambitions went far beyond even his formidable military capabilities. While laying siege to Constantinople, a dream his predecessors never fulfilled, he learned that Timur's massive army was advancing into Anatolia. This Central Asian conqueror who, Eric claimed lineage from Genghis Khan and had already established a vast empire stretching from India to the Mediterranean. The conflict arose due to Owen Bey's hostility towards his Turkish vassals. The two powers clashed at Ankara on July 20th, 1402. Despite leading a strong army, Owen Bey found himself surpassed by Eric's superior forces and strategic prowess. When some Turkish units in Owen Bey's army switched allegiance to Eric, angered by Owen Bey's policies that centralized power, the battle collapsed into a complete defeat. Owen Bey was captured and, according to myth, kept in a cage at Eric's court until his death the following year. The Battle of Ankara almost shattered Owen Bey's empire. Eric restored the Turkish ruler Owen Bey had defeated, divided Ottoman Anatolia among Owen Bey's sons, and placed his own supporter as leader over the European lands. After Eric's withdrawal, the Ottoman state plunged into civil war, with Owen Bey's sons struggling for dominance. This era, called the Interregnum, or Fête d'Ai, spanned from 1402 to 1413, threatening to undo a century of Ottoman development. Eventually, Mehmed I, one of Owen Bey's sons, triumphed through patience and political acumen. He restored Ottoman rule across both Anatolia and Europe, but had to concede independence to certain local governors and acknowledge the authority of Eric's successor over parts of Anatolia. By the time of his death in 1421, Mehmed had brought stability to the Ottoman realm. The state was established, laying the foundation for a new phase of growth under his son Eric II, who inherited an empire that had regained strength but remained fragile. Throughout his 30 years in power from 1421 to 1451, Eric worked tirelessly to protect Ottoman territories. re-establish control over allied states, and restore Ottoman institutions in Europe. He encountered fierce opposition from János Hunyadi of Hungary and Skanderbeg of Albania. In Anatolia, he steadily brought the autonomous region of Beyks back under control. Although Erik is less well known compared to those before or after him, his careful efforts were essential for the empire's revival. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire had shrunk to just Constantinople and its nearby areas, surviving mostly because the Ottomans were occupied with other issues. In 1444, a crusade led by Hungary posed a threat to Ottoman rule in the Balkans, but Erik crushed this army at the Battle of Veii, ending serious European attempts to push back Ottoman gains. When Erik passed away in 1451, his 19-year-old son, Mehmed II, took charge. The young ruler had already shown sharpness and severity during 2 short intervals when his father had stepped down temporarily. Fully in command now, Mehmed shifted his focus to the prize that had always escaped his forefathers: Constantinople, known to the Turks as the Red Apple, the symbolic center of Eastern Christianity, and the most strategically important city in the region. In the region where Bayezid had acted hastily, Erik would accomplish his goal through meticulous planning. The scene was set for a conquest that would transform the Ottoman state into the Ottoman Empire and alter the trajectory of world history. The fall of Constantinople would symbolize both the conclusive demise of the Byzantine Empire and the dawn of a new Ottoman era. The century and a quarter between Owen Bey's passing and Erik II's rise had seen a small Turkish emirate grow into a powerful international force. Thanks to military expertise, administrative reforms, and extraordinary endurance in the face of devastating setbacks, the Ottoman dynasty created a state combining Islamic, Turkish, Byzantine, and Persian influences. As Erik II prepared for his fateful moment, the foundation for an empire that would last centuries and impact 3 continents had been firmly established. The city stood as it had for more than 1,000 years, its colossal walls proudly towering above the waters where Europe and Asia nearly meet. Constantinople, once ancient Byzantium, had resisted numerous sieges throughout its extensive existence. Founded by Constantine the Great in 330 CE as the eastern capital of the Roman Empire, it survived even after the fall of Rome itself. Through wars, epidemics, crusades, and internal conflicts, the Queen of Cities endured, protecting the treasures of classical knowledge within its libraries and churches. Yet now, in the spring of the final chapter, its fate hung in the balance. In 1453, Constantinople confronted its most formidable trial. The last ruler of Byzantium, Constantine XI Palaeologus, led a force of barely 7,000 defenders tasked with guarding walls that extended for miles. What once was an empire spanning 3 continents had dwindled to just the city itself and a few scattered strongholds nearby. Outside those walls, an army awaited, one more numerous, resolute, and better armed than any before. Mehmed II had reclaimed the Ottoman throne for the second time in 1451 following the passing of his father, Murad II. Though merely 19 years old, the young sultan had already experienced the grip of power during his father's short-lived retirement years earlier. Those who underestimated his youth soon realized their mistake. Mehmed possessed sharp intellect, unwavering determination, and ambitions reaching far beyond those of his forebears. Upon ascending to the throne, Mehmed made his objectives unmistakably clear. What my ancestors endeavored to accomplish through many campaigns I will achieve with a single strike. Constantinople became his fixation, the treasure that would elevate the Ottoman state into a genuine empire. He meticulously studied the city's defenses, examined chronicles of former unsuccessful sieges, and began carefully planning the conquest. In 1452, Mehmed commanded the erection of an enormous fortress named Rumeli Hisari on the European side of the Bosphorus, positioned directly opposite the older fortress across the strait. The Anatolian stronghold of Anadolu Hisar, together with other fortifications, formed what Mehmed referred to as the throat cutter, a formidable barrier capable of overseeing all maritime traffic passing through the strait. Whenever a Venetian ship dared to defy the blockade, its crew faced execution, and the captain was impaled, sending a stark warning to anyone thinking of breaking the Ottoman grip. Inside Constantinople, Emperor Constantine observed these events with mounting concern and sent urgent pleas for assistance to Western Europe. He even consented to the union between the Orthodox and Catholic churches, a highly unpopular decision among his people, who still bore the memory of the Fourth Crusade's sack of their city in 1204. Despite these efforts, the response was limited since petty conflicts, religious divisions, and the expanding Ottoman influence deterred much-needed aid. Ultimately, only a few hundred skilled soldiers arrived from Genoa and Venice, accompanied by a brilliant Genoese engineer named Giovanni Giustinani Longo, who took charge of reinforcing the city's fortifications. The Ottoman preparations were remarkable in both scale and ingenuity. Mehmed gathered an army nearly 80,000 strong, composed of elite Janissary infantry, Anatolian Turkish cavalry, and auxiliaries from his European vassals. To break through Constantinople's famed walls, he hired a Hungarian cannon maker named Urban to develop siege artillery of unprecedented power. When the Byzantines failed to meet Urban's wage demands, Mehmed seized the opportunity to secure the services of this master craftsman. The engineer had offered his expertise to Mehmed, leading to a crucial choice that changed everything. The outcome was a colossal cannon capable of launching stone spheres weighing up to 1,500 pounds. This enormous piece of artillery needed 60 oxen for transportation. Its tremendous power made its thunderous blast audible for miles around. Alongside this basilica cannon were dozens of smaller but still impressive guns. Such heavy artillery had never before been used against medieval fortifications, which were constructed for a different era of combat. At the same time, the Ottoman navy effectively blockaded the city, cutting off maritime aid, although the Byzantines had stretched a massive chain across Owen Bay to stop enemy ships from entering the natural harbor. Mehmed's fleet of more than 120 ships made sure no supplies could reach the defenders by sea. On the 6th of April, 1453, the Ottoman forces positioned themselves before Constantinople's walls. Mehmed sent a single message to Constantine offering to spare the emperor's life and protect his people if they surrendered. Constantine responded with dignity, firmly refusing to hand over the city. The siege commenced the very next day. For weeks, Ottoman cannons relentlessly pounded the fortifications, especially the vulnerable land walls of the Theodosian section. Byzantine engineers labored through the night trying to mend the damage, plugging breaches with stones, wood, barrels, and even earth combined with cloth. Several Ottoman attempts to storm these weakened areas were met with fierce resistance and suffered heavy casualties, as the defenders fought with the bravery of true warriors. Desperation gripped Eric as he encountered unexpectedly fierce resistance. He understood that breaking the harbor chain was crucial to completing the encirclement of the city in one of the boldest military operations in history. He commanded his engineers to construct a wooden track covered in animal fat. Overnight, numerous Ottoman ships were dragged overland from the Bosphorus across the Galata Peninsula and launched into Owen Bay behind the defensive chain. At dawn, on April 22nd, the Byzantine defenders were shocked to find Ottoman vessels sailing in waters they believed impenetrable. Despite this blow, the defense persisted. The Byzantines attempted a daring night raid to set fire to the Ottoman fleet inside Owen Bay. This effort failed, leading to the capture and execution of the courageous sailors involved. Repeated Ottoman attacks against the city walls were pushed back, though at a severe cost in irreplaceable defenders. Both sides understood that time favored the attackers, as the Byzantines were running low on men, supplies, and morale. By late May, the continuous bombardment had heavily damaged the walls. Eric convened a council of war and declared his plan to launch a final, all-encompassing assault. Before the offensive, he spoke to his soldiers, promising them the customary 3 days of unrestricted plunder, allowed by Islamic military law after a victorious conquest. To boost their resolve, he arranged his forces to encourage competition among units, promising special rewards to those who excelled. Constantine XI gathered his commanders for a final meeting, fully aware of what the following day would bring. The last Byzantine emperor spoke passionately about the city's heritage and the shared responsibility to protect Christian civilization. Afterward, he walked along the walls, offering words of encouragement to his weary soldiers before heading back to the grand Hagia Sophia Church for a last prayer service. Clergymen from both Orthodox and Catholic traditions set aside their differences in this hour of desperation, praying together for salvation. The final attack started in the early morning of May 29th, 1453. Wave after wave of Ottoman forces threw themselves against the walls. The initial strike by irregular troops was driven back, followed by a second assault from Anatolian soldiers, which was also repulsed. Then, the Janissaries disciplined, fanatical, and determined, launched their attack near the gate of St. Romanus, where the walls had suffered the greatest damage. Amid this fierce combat, Giovanni Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, was seriously injured and carried away from the walls. Confusion spread amongst the defenders as a small postern gate was left open for his evacuation, and some Ottoman soldiers discovered this undefended entry point.